How is it going, everyone? You know when these headlines came out that I was gonna talk about this, and that is PlayStation seemingly changing their focus with the live service gaming. And it seems like a lot of these titles have been delayed. Oh, does that do my heart so much joy? If you are sick and tired of hearing me talk about games like Concord and Fair Game, and sick and tired about me talking about a Killzone 2 remaster needing to happen, well, you can click off this video right now because all of the aforementioned things are going to be mentioned in this video. So with that being said, outside of that, we also have a couple of updates on PlayStation as far as their structure from the higher-ups go, and also, while PlayStation seems to be changing their focus into live service, looks like Warner Brothers has some other plans, and it's a very sad story when you look at the state of Warner Brothers, and primarily one of their key studios, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. First of all, PlayStation has cut down the number of live service games planned to release by March of 2026 from 12 to 6 games, noting that they need to meet quality expectations. The number of live service projects planned to release by fiscal year 2025 has been reduced from 12 to 6. Sony is focusing on projects that they think they will meet the quality expectations from gamers, and they will evaluate the state of the 6 other projects at a later date. I am very confident in saying that a significant portion of those quote-unquote 6 other projects are going to be canceled, and the cut down from 12 to 6, yeah, that is their plan right now, to release those games by fiscal year 2026. We just saw what happened with Last of Us Factions. I guarantee you that not all of those 6 games are coming out. Not a real hot take. We know that this live service venture has been a little bit of a disaster. I hope with things like, you know, the Horizon multiplayer project, whatever that ultimately ends up being, if that MMO actually comes out, and whatever they're working out on that front, hopefully some of those games actually do come to fruition. But whoever was at the helm and in charge of venturing into live service, look, it's very obvious to see why so many publishers are going down this route, and we'll talk about Warner Brothers in a second, but Warner Brothers is very much going down this route as well. And it wasn't just a Sony thing. Ubisoft, EA, they all want a piece of that live service pie, because why? They see games such as a Fortnite, Apex Legends, these major titles that, man, we only have to develop and, you know, publish them once, and then for years and years, yeah, we have to invest in them for quite a while, but the investment level isn't as much as, let's say, creating a huge AAA game from ground up, but we can have that game be monetized for years and years, just generating revenue year after year. It's a very enticing proposition. However, when you look at the game plan of a Ubisoft, of a EA, of a PlayStation, it's always the same deal. 12 live service games in the span of that period, that's what was originally intended. 12 titles. Do you think Sony thinks all 12 of those games were gonna be successful? No, but in their head, they're just like, yo, we can put out 10 games that flop out of those 12. We don't even give a damn if those 10 games flop, because guess what? If we release 2 games that stick, oh baby, that venture has been a W, because we'll ultimately shut down the other games, and those 2 games will keep generating us revenue year after year after year. But then the concern starts to be, oh, what if none of those 12 games turn out well? What if all of those games don't reach quality expectations? Well, then you're reaching to a point that's a little bit of a disaster. And also, when you talk about so much emphasis into live service, especially from a PlayStation standpoint. Screw Ubisoft and EA for a second. From a PlayStation standpoint, you are going away from what the PlayStation brand has been known for the last decade. The last decade has been focused on what? Big budget AAA single player experiences, and we can go back a decade and a half if you want to. It's just when you go back a decade and a half, then you start talking about things like the Killzones and the Resistances of the world, and those were obviously multiplayer focused. But for the last decade, that PS4 era, what was it defined by? It was defined by the God of Wars, the Spider-Mans, the Horizon Zero Dawns, all of these games being single player only titles. And some of those lesser games, while they didn't hit a 90 on Metacritic, they still did okay. A Days Gone, an infamous Second Son, and so on and so forth. That has been the core pillar of PlayStation, and going away from that, you're kind of going away from what the hardcores and what that brand was built on, that audience that PlayStation 4 catered towards so much, and that is very evident when you look at this 2024 lineup. Nothing from Sony first party has been announced. Look, they got some timed exclusivity deals, more power to them. They can throw a bunch of money at Square Enix and make Final Fantasy VII Rebirth a 3-month exclusive, make a Final Fantasy 16 a 9-month, 1-year exclusive, and people were parroting around being like, oh, that's a first party exclusive, that's a PlayStation exclusive. It's not. It is not an exclusive. What we want is the major first party exclusives from Sony first party, that being titles like Spider-Man 2, God of War, and I get it, these games take longer and longer to develop, and you can't expect a Sony bend to put out games every other year or every 3 years like they had done in the PS2 and PS3 era. And you can't expect a Sony Santa Monica to put out a new God of War game every 2 to 3 years. That's why I'm all in favor of this idea of the 1.5 style games that Insomniac did with Miles Morales. I'm totally in favor of that and would love to see that becoming a regular aspect, not of just PlayStation and gaming as a whole when you're talking about these 5-year development cycles. And guys, I have never been of the mindset that, oh, they need to completely forego these big games altogether. I understand why these games take so longer to develop. They're more ambitious than ever. I just wish that we could go back to the PlayStation 3 days where we could scale that ambition back, but we're living in a world where the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't go back to the lesser projects anymore. I understand that. It's just, I kind of romanticize that PlayStation 3 era where Naughty Dog put out Uncharted, Uncharted 2, Uncharted 3, and Last of Us Part 1, all in the span of, what, 6 years? And really, when I look at Naughty Dog, in the last 6 years, they got me Last of Us Part 2 and a Last of Us 1 remaster and Uncharted Lost Legacy. Like, I'll take the 6 years we got in the PlayStation 3 era all day long, but, you know, that's a diatribe that I won't go back down into right now. But like, you just look at 2024 and sure, you can get games like Concord and Fair Game that really looks to be like, as far as Sony first party goes, Concord and Fair Game are the games you have to be excited about, because I don't know if Ghost of Tsushima 2 is coming out next year, and outside of that, you know, there are titles that they are working with other studios in publishing, like a Rise of Ronin. Hopefully that does drop next year and it turns out well. And then there's other games like people are gonna be like, oh, that's an exclusive that's coming out in 2024, and, you know, I'm sorry, like, you cannot run around pretending like Lost Soul Aside is an exclusive that's gonna come out next year. You just can't do that and then use a game like Lost Soul Aside to pad out your image portfolios of, oh, look at what Sony's got in the works. Like, no, that's the same thing as, you know, putting in Elder Scrolls 6 in those Microsoft, like, portfolios and images and be like, look at what Microsoft's... Bro, those games, like, Lost Soul Aside, I'm sure is further along in development than Elder Scrolls 6, but, like, bro, you can't look at that game being like, oh, that's coming out in 2024. The 2024 window right now looking incredibly barren. Stellar Blade, I don't know the status of that game and if that's coming out in 2024. It was scheduled for 23. Hopefully it's 2024 and it turns out, wow. Lost Soul Aside, like, yeah, I've been following that game for 7 years, and like, to say that that game is a 2024 title is just comical in my opinion. It might come out next year, but like, I feel like we've been saying that for the last 5 years, so like, no, like, I'm not gonna say that that is a 2024 game. Then you look at, you know, Rise of Ronin, that is pretty cool. Again, another sort of exclusivity agreement where it's not a first-party studio. Rebirth, 3-month exclusivity. That's not even an exclusive. Like, let's be real, you cannot go around and parrot that game as an exclusive. It's a timed exclusive for 3 months. Like, guys, come on now, that's really not an exclusive. And it's not about having exclusives, it's about Sony cultivating a world-class first-party portfolio that we all know they are capable of. We all know that Sony can offer us multiple high-quality first-party titles every year, but obviously when you are going down the live service route so hard, that is going to be taken away from your core single-player experiences. And I've always been of the mindset, yo, give us multiplayer games. Sony needs to round out their lineup with multiplayer titles, but you know, you guys already know what I'm gonna say, so I'm not even gonna say it. Yeah, you guys know where I'm gonna go with this, but obviously, whatever happened with Bungie and Last of Us Factions as far as Bungie assessing that project and then that project pretty much being put either on ice, canceled, or maybe baked into Last of Us Part 3, I feel like that has been something that has also sent shockwave effects through the entirety of this live service plan. I imagine Marathon is one of those games that will hit by March of 2026 or whatever, but Bungie's got its own problems right now as far as that's concerned. So, you know, I hope that Sony does go back into focusing on first party. I hope that 2024 at least has something, because guys, 2023 was pretty bad when it comes to first-party Sony releases. You got Burning Shores, you got some VR titles, and you got Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2, absolutely a standout, world-class, but we need a couple more of those a year. At least ideally, that's what I would like. At least two. At least have one to kickstart the year, have one to close out the year, and it just seems like at this point, 2024 for Sony, you don't have any first-party major titles to kick off the year. Are we gonna have one to close out the year? You would think that game would be announced by now. I don't think Wolverine is 2024. Death Stranding 2 maybe is 2024, but we'll see about that. And I just feel like it's been a mediocre 2023 and into 2024. Hopefully we'll get something a little bit better. I do also want to quickly note a couple of other things. Sony President, CFO, and COO Hiroki Totoki will be interim Sony Interactive Entertainment PlayStation President and CEO from April 1st for a maximum of 1 year. This is with Jim Ryan stepping down. You guys get the idea. They're going to find somebody to take the helm at some point as far as Sony going forward. And want to also talk about this because this is a very big topic that I also want to talk about when it comes to live service. Warner Brothers, on the other hand, says it's focusing on transforming its biggest franchises into live service games, noting our focus is transforming our biggest franchise from largely console and PC based with 3 to 4 year release schedules to include more always-on gameplay through live services, multi-platform, and free-to-play extensions, with the goal to have more players spending more times on all platforms, ultimately spending more money over a longer period of time. Ultimately, we want to drive engagement and monetization of longer cycles and at higher levels. We are currently under scale and see a significant opportunity to generate greater post-purchase revenue. Obviously, a big talking point attached to this has been Suicide Squad. Suicide Squad was a game that was scheduled for a release, I believe, back in 2022, and then it was delayed into 2023, and now it's scheduled for February of 2024. Awful timing as far as it releasing around the time of a lot of other games. Has some microtransaction elements baked into it, and I think they really wanted to go all in as far as the microtransaction with that game. And it's so sad when you look at Suicide Squad. What's the development studio working on Suicide Squad? One of the greatest development studios of the late 2000s and 2010s. In the development studio behind the excellent Batman Arkham trilogy, Rocksteady. Rocksteady put out Batman Arkham Asylum in 2009. 2011, they came back with Arkham City. And 2015, they came back with Arkham Knight. All of those games, I would say, most would say excellent in regards to all of them. I know some people weren't crazy about Arkham Knight, but I personally think all three games are excellent. Each of those respective games had a little bit of DLC content attached to them as well, so they worked on that. But they put out those three games in the span of 5.5 years, I believe it was, from 2009 until mid-2015. And now, what has Rocksteady done since the release of Batman Arkham Knight back in mid-2015? Nothing. They did some Arkham Knight DLC, and since then, no major AAA release. They've been working on this Suicide Squad game, and now it's finally coming out in February of 2024. Almost 9 years have gone by since Rocksteady put out their last major game. 9 years. Let that sink in for a second, because Rocksteady at one point was known as one of the best game development studios on planet Earth, and after the release of Arkham Knight, people were speculating for a long time, what were they working on? They're going to do another banger of a title, another insane licensed games. And remember, before Batman Arkham Asylum, licensed games kind of had a little bit of a stigma attached to them that they were no good. Superhero games weren't at that level, and Arkham Asylum, for a lot of people, changed that perception. I know it did for me, and now to see what Rocksteady's become, and I really hope that they knock it out of the park with Suicide Squad, but my skepticism for this game is at an all-time high, and you guys know I'm a little bit pessimistic when it comes to gaming in general, but this is another one of those studios that it's just a little bit sad to see where they've gone to. And I think had Rocksteady just been left to their own devices to do a big budget AAA title, single player oriented, maybe have some DLC in there, fine, maybe have a little bit of a multiplayer component, but let Rocksteady do what Rocksteady does, I think we would have had at least 2 games of high caliber and high quality by now, or at least 1 game and then 1 in deep development. But that is not the case, and I don't see that level of excitement for Suicide Squad being there right now, which is sad. And you know, hopefully, look, I didn't have that much excitement going into the release of Arkham Asylum. I was, like, pretty young back then, but Arkham Asylum blew me away. Suicide Squad can certainly do that as well, but with Warner Brothers' focus into turning their biggest franchises into live service titles, that is just something sad to see when you do have a studio as talented as a Rocksteady under their umbrella. But we'll see how it turns out. Look, Hogwarts Legacy crushed it earlier this year, and I'm sure when that game gets a sequel, it'll crush it again, but, you know, if that game goes the full monetization live service route, that would be a disappointment as well. But we'll see how these things play out. Again, I come across very pessimistic. That's just how I am with these days, with gaming these days, just because I feel like we get disappointed so often. But yeah, that'll do it for me. I know a little bit lengthier of a video, but a lot to talk about here with PlayStation and their live service plans changing. Hiroki Totoki at the helm as interim PlayStation president, and as far as Warner Brothers go, that's going to be a story to monitor on. I think Suicide Squad is going to be a huge release, because if Suicide Squad doesn't turn out well, then, like, Rocksteady's going to be really under a microscope. And I think Rocksteady is still an immensely talented studio. It's just we haven't seen them in a while, and if they are going the full live service route, that is a bummer. But I'm sure that's not their decision. That's a decision coming from Warner Brothers and the publisher, more than anything. But that'll do it for me. Sound off with all of your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you for watching, and goodbye. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and if you're already subscribed, do us a favor and hit the bell icon. This way you'll be notified whenever we post a new video. That's the best way to keep up with all of our uploads, and we usually try to upload 2 videos a day. And with the bell icon hit, you'll be notified whenever we do upload a video. As always, thanks for watching.